So how would you describe your music education prior to Santa Clara University? In context, is it satisfactory?
Okay. I guess I didn't really have much of one. I mean, during elementary school, I had, you know, like basic music classes and stuff like that. And then I went to a private school when I was in 6th grade. And we did basic stuff, like I did choir, I guess, was mandatory for a couple of years. You could be in like choir or band. So I did that, and then when I got to high school, I didn't have to do it anymore, so I didn't have to do anything. I, you know, went through and didn't take a single music class throughout high school.
It wasn't very comprehensive, I don't think. It was, well, I don't know, I guess it was, I was lucky because I went to a private school where you could do whatever you want, really, you know. It's not like, I mean, they had like a very strict core curriculum, I guess, but it was, you know, it wasn't one of those like public schools where programs have been cut or whatever. You know, they had enough money to afford a strong music program. So it was, but it was, nothing was forced on you. You know, you could do jazz band if you wanted. You could perform in the choir if you wanted. You could perform in theater if you wanted. So, I mean, I guess mine was pretty good, honestly. I mean, I guess I performed not only in the choir for all 4 years, but I also was part of like the theater program, which a lot of times were musicals.
I think if it had been approached in a way that, like, you know, in maybe like a music history kind of course, or, you know, maybe if it wasn't necessarily playing music, I mean, maybe I could have done that too, but you know, if it was involved somehow in the curriculum otherwise, like if it was involved in your history courses and you learned about the history of music and you learned how it intertwined with the culture and how it affected historical events and things like that, or how it reflected historical tendencies or things like that, then I probably would have, you know, been interested in it.
Looking back on it now, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot if I had been introduced to this wide variety. But I guess maybe your musical educational experience is only as good as the person teaching it, right? And so if they have a very limited perspective on what music is, you know, if their perspective on music is that it's, you know, traditional choir pieces with a sprinkling of, you know, Celtic or African music thrown in, then maybe that's all you're gonna get, really.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, I think that. I mean, I think that one of the biggest things about studying music is seeing how it's influenced people and seeing, you know, not looking at it in a box, but kind of in the broader sense of how it affects people and how it's part of cultures and things like that. So, there was none of that. So I mean, it was largely just like you go and you learn to, you know, you're part of the band or you're part of, you know, jazz band, and, you know, those were kind of the big areas. And they loved that. I mean, people who did it loved it and loved what they did, and I never was involved. And I guess if it was approached in a more, you know, integrated part of the curriculum, you know, like they said, like this is part of your learning, that because music affects so many other things and it's part of a culture, you know, etc., that I may have.
So could it realistically expose you to another culture? Honestly.
Could it?
Could it? Do you think it has, or in the classroom setting?
I mean, I don't think it has in the classroom setting. I think that all that stuff's, you know, all my learning about, you know, how music affects culture and how it's a part of culture has come from all sorts of different, you know, real life circumstances, you know, and meeting people who are involved in it, whether it be you or other people, you know, who are involved in music, and I think outside of that, I mean, I think that it could be in the classroom, like it could be part of a curriculum easily. I mean, even if it was an elective type course, but in a high school, because we had those, you know. But yeah, I think that it could absolutely show you, you know, the way various cultures work, and I think there's a definite connection between the music of a particular culture and a particular place, and the people. And I think that you could easily make an argument that that could be integrated into a broader classroom setting.
It's perfect. It tells you, you know, rap, for example, is very, very meaningful. The lyrics are not very, you know, empty. They all have meaning to them. And so as you study, you know, the history of hip-hop and rap, and you look at what's actually being said, I think that can give you good insight into sort of, you know, almost the political history of this, you know, underrepresented minority.
I mean, I think for me, here's the deal. I mean, you have to. If you're looking at the education system, there are certain things that have to be done,
yeah.
and you can't
Okay.
get around that. So it's like, you know, people need to learn to read, they need to learn to write, they need to learn to, you know, do basic mathematics and all these kind of things. I mean, to function in society. And I don't think that in any sense that those things should be sacrificed for, you know, musical education. Now, that being said, I think there's an easy, there's a major benefit for a large group of people. It's not anyway. I mean, there's a benefit for everybody to have some sort of musical education, not necessarily like intensive musical education, but some sort of appreciation of the art of you know, music and how that plays itself out and how that affects people, and there has to be value put on that, I think. And in addition to that, I mean, I think that one of the biggest things that's overlooked is it's often a good thing for kids to get involved in. I mean, and this is maybe we're talking, you know, younger kids, but even through high school, I think. I mean, this is something that is an alternative to sports. It's an alternative to doing nothing after school. I mean, potentially. I mean, this is something that people can be involved in. Not only is it important, but it's a creative and good and functional outlet for a lot of people, and it's a creative outlet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. In my mind, I feel that younger children should always be exposed, maybe forced to play a variety of instruments, not for like necessarily long periods of time, but just enough to see if they actually enjoy it, so that you can pick it up at an early age. And if they don't, after a certain point, you know, just drop it. You don't have to play an instrument if you don't want to, or perform if you don't want to. But that being said, I do think, like you said, music is a huge part of American history. And I think it would be stupid if there was a music history as separate from normal American history.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think one of the hard parts of this is that crossing cultural lines is often a sticky business that, you know, people don't want to get involved in, because it brings up a lot of issues that maybe there and maybe under the surface, or maybe right there on the surface, but that you know, depending on where you are and the kind of makeup of your class and things like that. I mean, that's a difficult thing and difficult gap to bridge, I think, a lot of times. So it has to be done in a way that's not only respecting of other cultures, but in addition to that, it is productive. I mean, you don't want to be, you know, offending people the whole time. And I'm not saying that, you know, all music is, you know, different kinds of music has to be offensive, but there are ways to bridge those lines in a productive manner, I think, and music is a way to do that. But at the same time, it's a form of expression that is often uninhibited. I mean, you know, people are allowed to express themselves via music. I mean, whether you want to look at Eminem, whether you want to look at rappers, in certain ways that may not be acceptable and would not be acceptable in the classroom. And that's not just rap; that's across, you know, all genres. But like, you know, and these examples rap. But I think that that's a problem, you know, for people getting music in the classroom often, is that there has to be a censorship level, because there's only so much that's appropriate for the classroom. Now, that's not to say that it shouldn't be taught or it can't be taught. It just has to be done in such a way that is often, I think, difficult and takes a lot of effort. And generalizations about different cultures, I think. Yes. And I think that's where you run into a major problem. Is, you know, take, you know, whatever you want. Take, you know, Cuban music, you know, take, you know, and say, well, this is, you know, Cuban music. Okay, well, that's fine, but that's just a part of Cuban music, right? Whatever you're playing is just a portion of it. It's a broader scheme, and, you know, hardcore rap is just a part of rap in the hip hop culture. I mean, so it's hard. I think it's important when you're dealing with those issues to make sure that generalizations aren't made. And I think that's the hard part, is that, you know, you put on a CD and you're like, okay, well, listen to this. This is a certain type of rap. It's a certain genre of rap, right? Okay, well, what does that represent? Does this mean that all people who have a certain set of characteristics are like this? I mean, I think that that's the danger, and that's the sticky zone that you get into, and that has to be breached in a you know, a conscious manner, you know.
I think that identity, everyone wants to have at least one form of identity, if not multiple layers of identity, despite what some professors at Santa Fe University say, and that in an effort to do this, one of the ways in which they do it is through the music. I think that's a big way.